So before that you said drugs.
My shelter became drugs and alcohol at one point. These became my gods.
Are you fully out of it now?
No amount of rehabilitation can help if you don't find a higher taste. You know, have you ever heard of crowded loneliness? Smiling face but breaking heart.
You said that no one has actually converted. What do you mean?
There's no such concept as I'm a Muslim or Christian or Buddhist or whatever the religion. I'm just a spiritual being having a physical experience of this reality.
It'll be interesting to know your journey. Talk us through.
I used to go to so many different places, speaking to so many different individuals from different practices, different background, different culture, trying to kind of really find my answers. How can I connect with God? What does God really look like? Who is He? I ended up homeless for 3 years in London. That search for God didn't dwindle. Nowadays, God's name brings more fear to people than peace. Why is it that even though we're praying so much, there are so many terrible things that are still happening?
And how do you think one can spread love?
We can't help others find their purpose. We can't help others find love if we have not experienced love ourselves.
What's next for Mahima Arnava?
Right now, I'm on this mission, this purpose in my life, which is to bring faiths together for dialogues. One thing that I always like to get people to think is that there's things that we see as it is and there's things that we see as we are. But if we see things as they are, then we really see beauty.
Mahima Arnava, welcome to Soul Sync. I'm really looking forward for this conversation because you're very young and you got into this where the spirituality seems to be your way forward, which is fascinating, I'm sure, for the viewers as well. But it'll be interesting to know your journey.
I'm on the early phase of a very beautiful mission and purpose that I'm trying to really go for. And so much of my journey started in the UK. So even though I was born in East Africa, in Somali, I spent majority of my life here in the UK in London. I grew up practicing a different faith, but I was always confused about faith. So this is the point that I was really confused and I was very inquisitive, very curious about why I was doing what I was doing in life. My parents taught me to be religious. My parents taught me to be very deeply rooted in my spiritual practice, but I could not be deeply rooted and deeply connected to my spiritual practice without understanding why I was doing what I was doing. And so I remember whenever I would ask my parents questions about why we were doing a particular ritual, their response often would be that don't ask these questions, they're bad and they're not gonna, that actually God wouldn't be happy with you.
I want to pause you there and I want to ask you a question. That's a normal thing in any religion where usually the parents, they don't like to be asked questions, especially because kids ask too many questions. And they answer some, they don't answer some. But that doesn't mean that a kid or a child will go away from that faith. He can find answers from elsewhere because there is more than one source, right? Not just your parents.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand that.
Yeah.
Was that the moment where you said, I'm not getting the answer, then that's what?
No.
No?
So the story goes much further than that. My parents weren't able to respond to the questions that I had. And then I started going to the religious leaders, spiritual leaders, asking them the same question. What does God look like? What are His qualities? What are His features? What are His characteristics? Particularly as someone who has dedicated so much of his life praying, chanting, fasting, doing everything that I was told in the scripture, and I still couldn't find my answers. I'm someone who's very much deeply grounded and rooted in desiring relationships. Just like every other person is. We yearn for relationships, we seek for relationships. And if we can't find those relationships, then it's very difficult to stick with a process. It's very difficult to stick with any relationship if you don't have a very deep understanding of why you're in that relationship. So it wasn't so much that because my parents couldn't answer my question, then I decided to leave. But rather what it is that the answers I was searching for and I was seeking for, I wasn't finding them anywhere around me. And then what I used to do is then I used to sneak out of home every other few days. And I used to go to church. I used to go to mosque. I used to go to so many different places, speaking to so many different individuals from different practices, different background, different culture. trying to kind of really find my answers. And what was that question? That question was that, how can I connect with God? Like, okay, they pray and chant, but I wanted to understand, okay, not just how can I connect with God, what does God really look like? Who is He? Why does He make the choices He makes? These were the questions that were coming into my mind as a young person. Why is it that even though we're praying so much, there are so many terrible things that are still happening? So many challenges. And my parents didn't know the answers to those. And it's not so much that I was angry and upset with them. I was now even more driven than ever before that I need to find my answers. And eventually, one event after the other, tension, conflict, disagreement, led me to making that ultimate decision that if I need to find my answer, I need to get out of this echo chamber. Because that's what it is that often we allow ourselves to be succumbed by what we think is love in our relationships. Because my parents have done so much for me, because of love, I will choose to turn away from my truth just to please, just to keep the peace. But for me, I felt like that is a disservice. That is not right. So therefore, I decided that, okay, I need to get out from this space. And this was then what had happened was I ended up homeless for 3 years in London. But the beauty of it was that even though I ended up homeless for 3 years, in and out of hostels, in and out of friends' homes and many different places, that search for God didn't dwindle. It intensified even more. I used to write a lot, journal a lot, and try and reflect a lot. Because now I no longer had the expectation and the pressure of around me. This is why people struggle so much to find their path. Because we live in a world today where we're so immersed, we're so trapped into so many different expectations and identities that it's practically so difficult to hear the voice within ourselves. And so for me, I felt like now that I'm no longer in that pressure, I'm no longer in that expectation, I was able to really hear more clearly, see more clearly. And it was difficult at the same time. It wasn't easy. And that's one of the other things that I would actually say, that actually my pursuit for spirituality, my pursuit for God, this journey that I'm on, it wasn't always easy. At one point, I honestly felt that perhaps maybe giving up was the answer and the solution.
I was going to ask you a few things from what you said.
Please.
You said the search for the God was the reason why it all started. You always had this question, I want to see the God. Who is He, right? The first is, did you find it? Or are you in the path to find it?
It's a very beautiful question you ask. And the analogy and the example that I can live is that just like a mother may always love her child, but because the child is not able to see that love and understand that love, so then the child thinks that actually it's not loved by a mother. So similarly, my relationship with God was always there. It's not that it was never there. It was just, I was very confused. Because I used to also read a lot. And so much information. There's a saying nowadays, we're drowning in information, seeking for wisdom. So because I was drowning in so much information, I thought I didn't have that love. But that love is always within us, that love for God. So I would say that it was always there, but this journey of bhakti that I'm on has just made it more clear for me.
Sure. The other thing I was going to say is, see, any faith, any belief system always promotes peace, always promotes, the inner peace and the inner love, love towards, other people, and finding peace at the end of the day. So your story, I don't want this to be nurtured as an example for people to, like kids, to just straight away disbelieve their belief system because no one is answering. Because see, if you didn't get the right answer, you go search for it within the same belief system that you are in, because the world has become a really fragile place when we use the word converted, when we use the word transformed. And you choose in a path, you're independent to do that, you have every freedom to do that. But I know that you're not drawing that conclusion that everyone should do, but it's good to put it out there to say, you know what, fine, because you said rightly so that you always knew that God is within you. It's just the information that's sort of like confused you, but once it layered out, now it's everything clear, and now you found the path of bhakti. Do you think, did I summarize it okay?
You have, but one thing I also wanted to mention is that, as I was saying, that I spent a lot of time also studying into my own personal faith. So it was actually only when I started studying more of it then the questions started coming up. And I was very much deeply immersed also in the practice. You see, nowadays what it is that if you don't, there's sometimes people, they don't search enough. And so then therefore, like you said, that, you know, they kind of make very sort of quick decisions and choices. But I do agree with you. I do agree with you that actually it's important to question. It's important to search. But it's also important to do it without bias, you know? And so when we can truly and really explore without having a sort of a pre-idea, pre-decision, then we can truly and really say that, okay, I've explored this faith, I've researched this faith, now I need to search other places. One thing I will add to that is that through my search of so many different faiths, they're not so much different from one another. They're not so much different from one another. The essence.
So, sorry to interrupt you. You said there's not much difference between all these faiths. Let's draw the comparison of what is the similarities and then whatever the little differences. I personally think that there is no difference. All religions in principle teaches the same things, but we as individuals interpret it indifferently and act differently and claim that a religion is the one who is teaching us, which is a wrong theory according to me. But since you said that you've studied all these religions or the belief systems and there is a similarity, let's look at the similarities.
That one of the same similarities that all these faiths establishes is that we're a spiritual being.
Define spirituality.
So we're a soul. We're a soul. Like every faith teaches that actually that this body is the vehicle, a temporary residence that we're living in. And so therefore, within that temporary residence that we're living in, it's there to help us to navigate from where we are to where it is that we're supposed to be. Which then is another thing that the most faith establishes, that this is not our true home, but it's a place that is filled with many struggles, difficulties and challenges, and that we should not depend too much on our senses, thinking and believing that actually this is our permanent destination and goal. So that's one of the first things that it establishes, what this world is about and who we are. All these faiths, if you actually study it, they teach this, and they teach it in a very similar way. And then not only that, most of these faiths also establishes the similarities is that whether one wants to call it God, Allah, Jehovah, whatever one may want to choose to call it, that is the destination to reconnect. It teaches us, it's not that we have lost connection. That connection has always been there, but we're trying to reconnect. The other thing that it teaches, because it's one of the biggest problems that we see in this day and age in the world we live in today, is that each faith teaches us not to be judgmental. Now, individuals may pull up certain scriptures, certain verses, and they may say, what do you mean? Okay, so then God said this. So we have to be, it's not that we have to be judgmental. We can be discriminative without being judgmental. We can discern what is right and what is wrong without attacking people, without putting other people down, without looking down on people. Because no faith teaches us to be proud, at least in the sense that is detrimental, at least on the sense that gains superiority over other faiths and other religions.
Sure, but there is a certain difference as well, right?
There are differences.
Especially on a materialistic way. So if you take Sanatana Dharma,
yeah.
I know it's a mix of vegetarians and non-vegetarians, but at least the faith that you follow, which is the Krishna consciousness, ISKCON, is one of the principles is, being vegetarian, which should be a pattern shift from other religion, other faiths, especially from one that you belong to. So how much of that plays a role, and how much of that was a challenge for you to move it? Because there are a few other things that we can talk about, but let's pick for one first, which is
Can I add one more thing to the past?
Oh yeah, sure.
Just one more thing that I want to add is that, which is essentially the key thing that threads everything together, which is that every faith, the similarity is also that it teaches us to call on the name of God.
Sorry, similarities to go in the name of
To
God.
call on the name of God. Every faith teaches us that actually the way to connect with God is through mantra, through chanting. Whether you're chanting Allah's name, whether you're chanting on the rosemary bead, whether you're chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is what we're going to move on to, but it teaches us that the Yuga Dharma, that actually the purpose of this world today, or not just today, that the purpose of our existence is to call on God's name. And if we can call on God's name with sincerity, if we can call on God's name with purity, then what it is that we can get the deepest realization. And the reason why I feel that that is so important more than ever is because nowadays God's name brings more fear to people than peace. Because what it is that people use God's name for their own injustice and wrongdoing. But what it is that I want to really establish that actually just because there's so much atrocity and things that are happening, it doesn't necessarily mean that it makes that thing in itself bad. People may do bad things, but it doesn't mean that the process is bad. It doesn't mean that the root, the essence, the core is bad. And so I really want to kind of discriminate the two. That every faith teaches that actually the purpose is to call on God's name, but to call on God's name with love and devotion and sincerity. And when we can do that, then we can truly and really practice love, and we can really and truly connect with people irrespective and irrelevant of what labels they are, who they are, what gender, background, religion and culture.
So now let's go back to the question that I've asked. Differences, but we'll start with one of the thing that I picked about turning from a non-vegetarian, I believe you were, to a vegetarian. And the overarching thing that I want to put is it's difficult because there are similarities, I would say on a supernatural level or superficial level rather, but at a materialistic level there is a difference, and let's accept it, because in Sanatana Dharma, specific to Krishna consciousness, vegetarianism is one of the things. Taking that as an example, tell me how difficult was it for you to transform from that to this, because it's a marked shift, right?
I must be honest that it was something that I actually embraced even before I came to Sanatana Dharma. It was something I explored even before I became a Sanatana Dharma, because what it is that when you connect to the deepest compassionate part of who you are, you actually realize that this activity, although it's been endorsed by perhaps maybe different faiths, it's the least compassionate thing that we can be doing. In fact, a friend of mine, he made a very valid point. He made this point that actually in heaven, everyone's vegetarian. Because actually if you look at the pastimes of Adam and Eve, there was no such practice as meat eating. You don't see that. And so it kind of reveals that what it is that it's something that has become a practice in this world, in the material world, in the material creation. And so I would say that even though it is something that is recommended in different scriptures, if people truly and really take a moment to connect with the deepest compassionate part of who they are, they would realize, just as I have realized, that actually this is taking me further away from God consciousness. And so when I had started to think like that, then I had started to realize that actually animals of all caliber are here for the same purpose as I'm here for. It's just that it's going to take them a little bit longer, but they deserve that same opportunity and the same chance as I do. And when I started to think like that, when I started to reflect on things like that, then I started to realize that actually this activity of eating meat isn't really helping me on my journey to self-realization. Or God realization. In fact, it's blocking it. Because when we eat animal, okay, then people may say that, we're saying God's name, and yeah, true. But we're also, as it teaches in Sanatana Dharma, is that we're also taking on their consciousness. The suffering, the pain, and everything. And so for me, when I started to reflect on things from this angle, I started to realize that I don't need to continue doing this. There's a saying, tell a lie long enough, it becomes a culture.
Repeat that.
Tell a lie long enough, it becomes a truth.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
A truth long enough becomes a culture becomes a tradition.
That's true.
Nowadays, we do so much destructive things in the name of so-called tradition, culture, truth, lie.
So true.
And so we need to break our way of thinking that actually, it's okay to eat animal. It's okay to slaughter an animal and eat an animal. We need to break that thinking, because it's that thinking that is actually preventing us from being able to dive deeper into our spiritual progress.
Now you're in the path of Krishna consciousness, as you said. How is it like for your family and your people around you?
I remember one day a boy came to me and said to me that I'm struggling. I'm always having a disagreement and dispute with my family. What's an advice that you can give me? As he asked me that question, I started reflecting on my own choices and decisions and my own relationships with my family. And I said to him that always remember that even if you have a disagreement, they love you. Sometimes what it is as we grow older and older and older, there is a tendency to become ungrateful, to think that we know best, to think that we're the ones that are going to save our parents. And so for me, it was that because I was so much driven by the pursuit for truth, that in the process of it, it was creating so much destruction around me in terms of relationships, in terms of with myself, my own mental well-being, my own physical well-being. And so it was difficult in the beginning. They disagreed on a lot of things. I disagreed on a lot of things. But one of the deepest things that I have been able to learn in my Sanatana Dharma practice is that two things actually: forgiveness, but also learning to see things through the eyes of others. It teaches us to become more selfless rather than selfish. When we're selfish, all we can think about is how we're right. When we're selfless, we learn to see things through the eyes and lenses of other people and realize that they're also acting out of what they consider to be love, but just different from the way we would consider love to be. So I would say that my relationship with my parents still is not easy, but things are a lot more better, not because that agreement is there, but because I'm learning to just accept them as they are. And also I'm just learning to accept myself as I am. And I'm also learning to understand that sometimes the greatest form of love for our family, for our friends, for everyone in life that have raised us, is to follow our Dharma. That we're in this world for a very short duration of time. And as the greatest, my mentor said that service is the language of gratitude. That if we truly and really want to express gratitude to our family and our friends, we do so by actually following our heart, following our Dharma and our purpose in this world that Krishna has given us.
Two things. One, you mentioned about the mentor. Do you have a mentor? And what role that mentor have in your life now?
My mentor today played the role that my father wasn't able to. I consider my mentor to be like a father figure. I considered my mentor to be my best friend, my guide. And so now more than ever, I realize the importance of mentors. Because as we go along this journey of life, especially when there's a specific purpose of what it is that we're trying to do, it's very difficult to see things, as he always says, it's very difficult to see what's happening when you're in the frame. So you need someone that's out of the frame, you need someone that's out of the picture to guide you, to correct you, to lovingly support you and inspire you. So that's the role of my mentor, and I've got many different mentors, not just one mentors. In the Sanatana Dharma language, they call that shiksha. And I turn to them whenever I'm confused. I turn to them whenever, I have certain ideas and visions, because sometimes we may have an idea and we may think that that idea will land beautifully to the outside world, but it's only until we get a second check and third check we realize that maybe it wasn't a good idea. The Bhagavad Gita says that. It says that what is nectar in the beginning can be poisonous in the end. Easy decisions becomes difficult to live with, but difficult decision becomes easier to live with. So I've got many different type of mentors nowadays in my life to help me in different areas.
You quoted few verses of Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
It must have been translated for you, right?
Mm.
It's not the actual Sanskrit which is written.
Yeah.
What's your favorite one?
One of my favorite one is, again in English, Krishna says to Arjuna that it is better that you perform your Dharma imperfectly than to try and perform and execute someone else's perfectly. And for me, that's really important. That's so liberating. It's so freeing, because nowadays, you see, I went through so much depression in my life. I went through so much mental anxiety in my life, having to think that I had to live up to certain expectations and pressures of the world. And you see that nowadays, that's the biggest problem that many people are going through. That what it is that everybody's looking for the ideal role, ideal identity, ideal husband, ideal wife, idealism. But in our pursuit for idealism, we're forgetting authenticity. We're forgetting to be real. We're forgetting to be genuine. And so you can see that relationships are so superficial nowadays. It's so artificial. So Krishna is just affirming to each and every one of us that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to try your best. You just have to just be genuine and be real and be sincere. And that's what's going to make you perfect. So it's learning to become perfectly imperfect.
That's a great saying. It said, Dharma is, it's okay if you're following your Dharma, and even if you're imperfect. That's what the verses says, right?
Yeah.
What is Dharma?
Dharma, Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual teacher, explains it beautifully. The Dharma of a water is to be liquid. The Dharma of a fire is to be heat. And so similarly, he says that the Dharma of each and every one of us is to serve. It connects beautifully to one of the first, our conversation in the beginning, that nobody converts to Sanatan. Everyone is just Sanatan. Because what it is that if everyone essentially follows their Dharma, they're serving. That's ultimately essentially what it is, that how can I connect with God? How can I connect with my purpose in this world? My purpose in this world to begin with is to serve. Sometimes people ask me, how do I find my purpose? I say to them, stop trying to find your purpose and just try and serve. Because through serving, you'll find what is the best and most effective way for you to perform your Dharma, to perform your service. For some, it may be speaking. For others, it may be cleaning. For others, it may be just to be a housewife. For some, it may be to be a police. So we get so caught up in the role, in the label, that we forget that it's not about the role and the label, it's not about the clothes that we wear, but it's the consciousness that we live our life with. And that's Dharma. To live with a consciousness that I'm here to serve selflessly.
As part of this conversation, you touched upon your family and you said that there is still there is soreness, there's still some differences. If your parents or if your family watching this, do you want to say something for them?
I would like to tell them that even though things hasn't been easy, I'm trying to live my life in such a way that at least they can be content. It's so beautiful. When I came to Sanatana, before I came to Sanatana Dharma, I used to struggle with drugs. I used to struggle with alcohol. I used to struggle with meat eating. I used to also gamble. But now it's like life has been so beautiful. All those things I used to struggle with, I don't even think about it anymore. So I would try and say that I'm trying my best to live a life that they can at least be content with, and a life that is an example for others, that they can turn their lives around also.
How long have you been in this for? And then they're practicing?
6 years.
6 years. So before that you said drugs.
Yeah, like there was a huge gap between when I was practicing other faiths to when I became so lost, especially during my time when I was homeless, then when I re-embraced Sanatana Dharma. I took shelter, when we talk about faith, having faith doesn't mean just having faith in God. We can also have faith in drugs. We can have faith in alcohol. We can have faith in anything and everything. So my shelter became drugs and alcohol at one point, because there was so much pain, there was so much suffering inside of me, so much confusion, that these became my gods. They became my shelter.
Are you fully out of it now?
Yeah.
Do you have to do the rehabilitation?
No. Prabhupada says that actually, one of the things that we often do is Sankirtan, book distribution. And one of the conversations I always have, sometimes I have, are people that are struggling with addictions. And what it is that no amount of system, no amount of process, no amount of rehabilitation can help if you don't find a higher taste. Because and you see that sometimes people, they've been sober for 20 years, 25 years, and then suddenly they return back to their addiction. So it's really a question of finding a higher taste, finding something that thrills you, inspires you, that you find is more addictive than your current addiction.
That's so true, actually.
Yeah.
That's so true. But it's not so easy. I mean, it's easier said than done, right? So you obviously, went through a journey, and you're opening each layer as we speak, from your addictions to drugs, to being an alcoholic, and then many other things, I'm sure. How were you approached? Or were you approached, or did you approach? How did this happen?
The change, you mean?
Change, yeah.
Community. Community. I would say that actually, have you ever heard of crowded loneliness? That what it is that nowadays we try and deal with so much pressure on our own. And part of that is, I'll be honest with you, one of the biggest issue with me was I was a people pleaser. That what it is that I had to come across like I had it all together externally, but internally I was breaking down inside. Smiling face, but breaking heart. And so for me personally, community was a very important part of my journey. That no matter what phase that I was on, making sure that at least I had one or two genuine people in my life to keep encouraging me, to keep believing in me, and to keep seeing the potential in me that I was not able to see in myself. And so I think that's really important, that each and every one of us, no matter what struggle we're going through, we should be surrounded by people that see us for who we can and could become, rather than just being around people that just see us for who we are. And so, yeah, I was surrounded also by so many people that just saw me as a very lazy person, an uninspired person, a very destructive person. But in reality, I decided to listen to the voices of inspiration rather than the voices of negativity.
Before we close, what's next for Mahima Arunava going forward from here? You're still young, it's about 30.
Right now, I'm on this mission, this purpose in my life, which is to bring faiths together for dialogues. It's an interfaith mission. I think nowadays the world is driven so much by, we spoke a little bit about it, differences, division. And focusing on these divisions is what's creating so much conflict and tension and war and violence. If I can live anything for my life, it would be what Srila Prabhupada has also taught me and taught us, which is to try and encourage everyone to sincerely call on the name of God, whatever the religion they may be in. And so my mission in life is to host more interfaith dialogues, programs, projects, events. Let's come together and let's have real conversations, and let's see where we can identify similarities, and let's cooperate.
And did you make a start on that?
I have. I'm running a community right now, individuals that are inspired to help with this journey. I'm trying to do more interviews, more talks, more programs, and then just trying to spread this wherever I can.
It was really good insights to your life, and it's been quite a journey already. As I said, you're still young, but here on, hopefully, you find everything that you want. So best wishes from us and from Soul Sync. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.